sense of what, not just what stories, but what ways of telling stories feel important to people in our region. And round one, we've had to teach the Virginia Tech bureaucracy a little bit about working with community organizations. So our paperwork's not finalized and our announcements aren't officially out, but they will be very soon. You would advance the slide for me, Lauren? Thank you so much. One of the things we're trying to do is redefine monuments. This is a big part of what Mellon is about, and we've embraced it wholeheartedly. We're not just looking for statues of dudes or statues of dudes on horses. We want to expand the possibilities for what counts as a monument. For example, for the round one winners, although I can't say more about them, I can say that we're funding a conference to reconstruct an Indigenous language, a music album, and a living monument. So really trying to push the boundaries of what counts. The projects could be sculptures or art installations, but they could be festivals, oral histories, digital archives. And really, you can be creative in how you want to tell the story. Just keeping in mind that monuments are arguments for what's important. And of course, we want to complicate the kinds of stories that are out there about Appalachia. We know from Mellon Foundation's national audit that most monuments across the country honor war and settler colonists. So that's one reason they've put their money towards trying to tell different stories, lesser known stories. So what we're looking for is stories that foster a sense of belonging to Appalachian Virginia, especially for those historically left out. We're looking for stories that strengthen communities and projects that strengthen communities. And we're looking for projects that honor collective struggles undertaken for the dignity and security of people and for the protection of land. So we're interested in shifting the spotlight away from individual heroes and onto collective efforts to look out for each other and the places that we care about. And I think everyone on here knows that we want the stories that defy stereotypes and recognize the region as dynamic and diverse as inspiring. So in terms of where the projects could be located, you see on the screen, the white area is the extensive territories of the Yesa people, more commonly understood or heard of as the Monacan tribe, which is how the federal recognition is named, the Monacan Indians. So anything in the Monacan territories is potentially included, though our focus is sticking close to the colonial borders of, well, actually post-Civil War borders of Virginia, and those are the 40 counties. If you're not in one of those 40 counties, if you're on a neighboring county, we're not really interested in excluding people. We're interested in expanding notions of Appalachia. So, you know, check with us, ask us. We encourage folks to apply. And just to emphasize, anyone can apply. We've heard some people confused about whether you have to have a pre-existing relationship with Virginia Tech, and that is not the case. We're really looking for new faces, new efforts, new stories, and we're really glad you're here. So thank you.
Thank you. So I'm going to jump right into some details about this round two proposal process, responding to some of the questions that we got in the registration. So just to go over the timeline, today we're doing the Q&A. Proposals are due on January 10th. On the 17th, the MAAV leadership team will be screening through the proposals and working to then give them to the advisory board for their review. We have a 8-person advisory board made up of faculty and community members, and you're welcome to go on our website, moremountainstories.org, to look at who's on our advisory board. Then the advisory board will invite a certain amount of people or proposals to come back with more information. And then the leadership team will meet with those people to have consultations about their resubmittal. Then that resubmittal will be due on March 4th. The advisory board will meet again on March 14th, and then we hope to announce the projects in May. These are, these projects need to be unveiled by fall of 2025. So what are we looking for? The rubric that we have set up says alignment with MAAV mission. And that is to what Emily was talking about what is the untold story. Also, community leadership and equitable collaboration, co-design, who is telling the story? Then also the goals and outcomes, what is the monument going to be? What are we working towards? And then we're also looking for a budget about where the money will go. What is the untold story? This is, again, back to what Emily was discussing about collective struggles. We're interested in stories about how people are working together, counter narratives, things we haven't heard before, things that surprise us about Appalachia in order to reframe the national imagination of Appalachia, while also taking stories that are local and connecting them to a greater idea of what Appalachia can be. And is. What is the monument? So I'm going to spend a little time talking about redefining monuments. We are reimagining what a monument can be. We want monuments to be able to educate, benefit, define, and further impact the community where they are located. And it's also not necessary at this point in time in your proposal for January 10th to know exactly what the monument is going to be. That can be part of the process that you work towards and to have something to unveil in fall of 2025. So the Monument Lab in Philadelphia defines monument as a statement of power and presence in public. That gives you a wide range of things to come up with. Some of the ideas that we have seen, and this is certainly not exhaustive, we've been looking at historical markers and signage, particularly in our monument audit, salvaged objects, spaces of reflection, public art, but it also can be something more ephemeral like a festival or an event. We are asking for a preliminary budget in this part of the proposal. The budget is up to $300,000. We are wanting to make sure in your preliminary budget that you are considering how you will equitably compensate artists, community organizers, and your collaborators. And do you have a fiscal sponsor? Who will be able to take the money? Has that something that you have figured out? And I think I actually, yes. So we actually have lost a slide somewhere in the process here. I apologize for that. It's one of our most important too. So I'm going to skip back to who is telling the story. This is something that's really important to have figured out at this, or to at least have an idea that you're working towards figuring it out in this part of the proposal, is who are your partners going to be? Are the people whose stories who are being told, do they have decision-making power in this process? Do you have everybody on board in order to do something that is co-created? And we don't expect perfection. The story, the partnerships, and the process are most important for what we're looking for January. We really want to support you in this process. The MAAV team is available to you. We also have a resource team which can offer technical assistance. This is particularly important as you're working to create your monument, that if you have challenges, technical issues that you need to work through, we have people available to help with that. You'll also have the opportunity in this proposal to select a faculty partner if you want to, or we can help you find one to support your project as well. So what we really want to make sure that you understand today is that we're here for you. We're here to support you and to answer your questions. Also, you can email maav@vt.edu, and we are available, or I'm available until December 15th to answer any questions specific about projects. We can set up a meeting to work through those. So if you have questions now, you want to enter them into the chat or raise your hand. We will work on facilitating those questions.
Oh gosh,
Okay, so first question coming in, does the faculty partner need to be a Virginia Tech faculty member? Emily, do you want to answer that?
Yes, the faculty partners will be at Virginia Tech.
And then what is the timeline for completion of projects after funded? So we'll work with you to develop your own specific project timeline. What we have on our timeline now is that they will need to be completed by fall of 2025. And that is because our grant is a 3-year grant. And so that's when the end of our grant will be. If you are a 501c3 organization, do you need a fiscal agent? If you are able to accept the money, you would not need a fiscal sponsor. Can the budget be submitted as an Excel template, or would a budget with a narrative be preferred? I think either way, there is an option in the proposal application to attach any photos or videos or supplemental documents. So you could do that as if that feels like something you'd want to include.
I would also add that the template that we have for the budget includes a space for a narrative explanation of the expenditure.
We might at some point want to take a look at that template and the just kind of walk through the Google form, but let's get to some more questions first.
Okay. Do you want to talk about the role of faculty partner, Emily?
Yes. The role of faculty partner would be up to the lead organizer. But it could be, for example, maybe a faculty partner would have a class where we would have our students do some of the legwork in terms of research. Maybe your faculty partner could fill in a role that you don't have on your team, like graphic design. Maybe your faculty partner could be someone with some experience in leading community engagement processes to make sure that when you pitch your idea to the people being represented or the communities, that you have as wide array as possible of folks who are contributing their ideas and their thoughts to what this should be. So the role of the faculty partner is really to follow your lead as the community applicant. You don't have to have one. We encourage you to take advantage of them. And also we encourage anyone to let us know if that relationship is not equitable, if it is not respectful. We are very aware of the very problematic history of relationships between academic institutions and community organizations. So if we match you with a faculty partner who's not working out because they don't respect your way of doing your work and telling your story, then we want to know about that, and we could look into reassigning or just removing the faculty partner if they're not. The role would be for them to assist you how you need to be assisted, and if that's not what they're doing, then you don't need to spend your time with them.
Okay, next question. To be clear, the creator does not have to be from the state. So that is true. We do not have to have a creator that is from the state. Although I think, encouraging you, making sure that they have the idea about what your story is the most important, and a connection to that.
And certainly we are hopeful to be able to support a lot of Appalachian creators and artists. So that may be, I think a national jury, national search is fine, but I do think we have an interest in supporting our local folks. So there'll be a balance there. I think that the advisory board will be trying to strike.
Okay, the next question, I'm going to read it out loud just to be clear. It's kind of long, but I think it's important. So I'm hearing that if we have a compelling story we want to tell and a strong group of proximate community members organized who want to tell that story, but no clear idea of exactly how the story will be told in public, we could apply, and our process could involve a community process to decide on a storytelling mechanism. Is that right? Yes, that is right. Does that, I think that was from Jill Williams. Did that answer your question okay?
I think so. I'll set up a separate meeting to discuss. Thank you.
Okay. So I put in the call for proposals, which is a link to that into the chat, as well as the form, which is a Google form for the proposals. That is also available on our website, moremountainstories.org. I think that answers some questions. How do we define faculty? So could the faculty partner be an AP faculty?
I'm gonna let Katie take this one.
Okay.
One of the reasons we designated it as a faculty partner is to help compensate a faculty person by offering course releases to that faculty member. And of course, an AP faculty member is not often teaching and wouldn't get course releases. But we understand, though, that there are multiple kinds of roles at Virginia Tech. And so if your partner is a Virginia Tech AP faculty member, we definitely can work with that person and figuring out how to compensate the person in relationship to the project.
And just to reiterate that if you don't know anything about that piece of it by January 10th, that's totally fine. That's something that we would be helping you figure out whether you want someone and what kind of person would be helpful to you. So if you don't know who that is or even what role they might play by January 10th, that's not a problem.
So I'm going to jump over to the Q&As we have coming in too. Is it possible for the project to incorporate multiple elements, such as an art and festival? Yes, it is possible if you can figure out the budget to make that work. I think temporary and ephemeral together, or permanent and ephemeral together, will work.
And in fact, we've been drawn to projects. I think our advisory board has been drawn to projects that have both elements, something that will be there beyond 2025 and something that is dynamic as well. And another thing the advisory board has found compelling is something that is of ongoing utility to communities.
If an artistic structure is being proposed on public space, do these approvals need to be in place before submitting the proposal? great question. I think it's helpful to, if you don't have approval, to maybe have a backup place, or to have some other idea just in case. But you do not need to have that in place before submitting the proposal. You would need to have some sort of agreement in place before resubmitting if you're invited to resubmit. We also will have the resource. One of the things the resource team would be available to do is to help work on things like making sure you get building permits and things like that for when we get to that point. Is there someone who can help find information on a person who might not have documentation? I don't know if I understand that question. Nikki, would you like to further?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. There is an individual that's part of what I'm writing the grant for, who, because he was African American, likely doesn't have documentation of what he did. But so the information that I'm getting is oral history, and I don't know how to confirm it. And it's just where I need help. Does that make sense? Does that help? Okay.
Yeah, and I think that is something we can talk about in a separate meeting too, just specifically about resources that might be available to help in that particular situation. But also that might be a good role for a faculty partner as well to connect with.
Okay, good.
Yes, and I would add to that too, one of the other resources that might be available is student interns as well. So if you are partnered with a faculty person at Virginia Tech, then they can also work with an undergraduate student who might be able to help with that as well.
With the research for finding. Okay, good.
So we have sponsored and produced many community projects for many years, but do not have a nonprofit status. Is that an imperative? No, you don't have to be a nonprofit, but you will need a fiscal sponsor or some sort of organization that can take in the grant money. Yes, so we are recording. If anyone would like access to it, we will send it out to those that are attending. And then one more question, I think for you, Emily, is to go over the sort of general ideas for the round one projects, which haven't been officially announced yet. So we're talking about them in more generalities.
So what can I say about round one? So one project is funding a conference to help reconstruct an Indigenous language, and they will also have some temporary signage. Another project is more of a, I don't want to say a garden, but it's alive. Like there will be interpretation, but the project itself is a living monument. Another one is a music album and a festival, and another one will be to be determined. So as someone asked, this group knows that they know what kind of story they want to tell, but they don't know yet how they want to tell it. And so they're going to engage probably in a competitive or limited competition, art competition, to get ideas from artists about how to best tell that story. And I'll also say that from round one, we tried to, or it worked out, and I think this was delivered on part of our advisory board. And Lauren, maybe we should say a little bit about who those folks are who will actually be making the decisions or advising Katie and me on those decisions. But we were able to have Indigenous stories, Latino Latina Appalachian stories, Black Appalachian stories. And we were able to cover a lot of ground in terms of having stories that are far afield. Some north of Blacksburg, some south of Blacksburg, some west of Blacksburg, some northeast of Blacksburg. So that'll be important to us to make sure that we don't end up with 6 stories all in the New River Valley here where Virginia Tech is, for example, or all in far southwest or all in Shenandoah Valley.
Okay, one more question has come in. The art is a significant part of the budget, but is it possible that the artist may not be identified at the point of submission? And this may be a decision made in community. Is that an issue? No, that is perfect. I think knowing what process you'd like to go through and how you're going to involve the community in that process is more important than knowing who the artist will be. For some projects, it could be different depending on your project. That's the end of the questions I see in the chat and the Q&A. If anyone has more questions or you want to raise a hand or put them in to the chat.
I started typing, but I don't type that fast. I was curious to know if you could tell us where the projects, you were saying that it's important that they be distributed throughout the region. Could you share in which locations generally the projects that were already selected are going to be installed?
So we can say that they're across the area at this point. I don't think we can get into specifics yet. I'm sorry. I don't think there's anything in the round 1 though that would prohibit you from applying for a round 2 location, because it's not like they're all in one location and we've exhausted that location. I think, you know, there are many stories to be told in many locations, and I don't think you should see that as a deterrent from applying.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And Emily has put the advisory board link in the chat too. So if you want to see who is on the advisory board.
Lauren, do you want to introduce Greg? Not to put Greg on the spot.
Oh yeah, Greg is here too. So I mentioned earlier, we have a resource team of, it will eventually be 12 people who are experts in various different things that could be helpful when creating a monument. And we will use them in sort of an ad hoc basis to deal with issues as they arise. Greg Lilly, who is on the call, if you want to wave, Greg, has been really helpful with just getting people excited about applying and answering questions about grant writing, particularly as we've been going to our listening sessions and supporting people in getting ready to apply.
Greg, say something so that your box pops up for people.
Okay, I'll unmute so you can see me. But yeah, any questions you might have, if I don't know the answer, I'll probably know some people that do, and I'll make the connection.
We have another question. How many applications were received in phase 1? Were there any interesting ideas or approaches that were not selected but show the broad nature of what could be done? So round 1 was a little bit different because they were faculty-led projects, and they were up to $80,000. So it's a little bit of, it was a different proposal request. And we received 9 applications, and I'm trying to think of how to address the question of, there were lots of interesting ideas. Some of it had to do with ideas that were ready. for this kind of work, but also ideas where they really had a strong community partner. And it was very clear that the people whose untold stories were being told were part of the process. That was very important to the advisory board. The next question, Appalachia is many states. However, this is just for Virginia. Yes. So yes, we are monuments across Appalachian, Virginia. That being said, as Emily addressed earlier on with the map, we are also including the Eastern Siouan territories, and we also challenge the idea of colonial state lines and would not want that to limit people's applications. But if you have specific questions about that, I'm happy to meet with you to go over, you know, what might be eligible if you have a specific idea. So the next question, does the monument creator have to be an Appalachian artist necessarily? For our situation, we have the potential to get a second casting made of a monument that was already designed and built on the other side of the country. This is actually a really good question. I don't think it's something we've addressed already. And I'm not quite sure it applies, but this idea of, we've talked about, you don't necessarily have to have an Appalachian artist, although we like the idea of supporting Appalachian artists. I'm curious about what it means to have a second casting of an existing monument. One of the things that our funder, the Mellon Foundation, is very interested in doing is funding things that aren't already funded or that are new ideas. I'm not quite sure that applies in this particular situation, but the idea of repeating an existing monument might be something that would have questions for the leadership team and the advisory board. I think, you know, that goes back to some of the round one conversations we had with the advisory board, is they do want to fund something that is new. One of the applications came in with something that had already been done and they wanted to do it again. And that didn't feel like the right fit. Oh, yes, I'm going to put my email address in the chat.
If other potential applicants have questions, I don't want to take away from your time to do that, but I also wonder, since we have about 20 minutes, if there are other folks who want to come off mute for observations, comments, thoughts. I'm happy to use this entire 20 minutes. And if what you're feeling is that we need to hear some pushback or some guidance, or just want you to feel like you can come off, raise your hand so Lauren can acknowledge you. But if you want to come off mute and explore with us a little bit more, that's what we're here for.
Okay,
Awesome.
Nikki? Yeah.
Can the artist budget go beyond the 200,000 and go into the administrative budget?
Yeah, I think those are our guidelines that we have. I think the intention and the goal is that you are equitably compensating everybody that is part of the process. That's the reason for that recommended breakdown, is to make sure that you are not just paying the artist, but you're also paying your co-creators and your collaborators and your community members, and compensating everybody equitably.
Okay, good.
before you call on Kathy or others, I'll just say that that might be something that Greg and others on the resource team could help you with if there are pieces that could be done in a staggered way and that this would be a step one, then you could have someone like Greg help you figure out what other pots of funding might be out there to augment what you're trying to do. Given how compressed the timeline is, if it's something that can't be done unless you get another set of funding, that's probably not going to rise to the top, just because we want to make sure that these are things that can be completed by fall 2025. But if it's something where you can imagine it in stages, then please do reach out for ideas about where else you might be able to get funding to augment the 300,000.
Thank you.
That's also something that we're available to help with, is to talk about feasibility. I can talk, with one of the round one projects, we went from doing full permanent signage to doing temporary biodegradable signage. So I think that there's some ways that we can adjust and in some ways make the project even more interesting. Are there more hands? Oh, Kathy, yes.
Yes. I am definitely, we would be looking forward to having that Virginia Tech faculty partner for sure. And you mentioned that the projects would allow for some help in choosing an artist. And you also mentioned that there would be some help in developing a project timeline. At what point does any of that help show up? If you were to be a finalist before you've made the submission in March, would some of that help be available at that point?
Yes.
Good, thank you.
Yeah, so depending on what the questions the advisory board has and what they're asking you to respond to, we would be there to help you figure that out.
Okay.
And that's a great time, to meet with the resource team, to meet with me, and to help work through some of those issues.
All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Bridget just put another question in the chat, and yes, we can collaborate before applying. Unfortunately with the holidays, that's a little bit constrained. Lauren's available until December 15th, so that's a pretty quick turnaround. But if you'd like to set up an appointment with her, and there are others, Dr. Plummer, a postdoctoral fellow, and Katie and I may also, if Lauren gets completely inundated with appointments between now and December 15th, we may be able to spread the load a little bit so that there can be some brainstorming. That's part of what we're hoping to be able to do, despite the holidays, is be conversation partners for you as you think about how to rethink the Appalachian interpretive landscape. Bridget, you can email maav@vt.edu to set up an appointment. Someone had asked about other kinds of pushing the boundaries proposals. I would just mention that, theatrical performances, dance workshops, oral history collection, and then sort of making visible some element of those gathering places, like a stage or space for people to interact and tell their stories. Katie and Lauren and Sarah, jump in if you have others. Greg, if you've heard some other ideas, jump in. But really looking at unusual, happy to consider unusual. It doesn't have to be, again, it doesn't have to be something other than an art installation, but we can think really broadly. The repurposed and that Lauren showed in the picture was some stairs from a building that no longer exists. That's from a different part of the country and a different project. But just a way to have some vestige of something that was there to remind us and continue to be useful as seating.
We're also part of the Monuments Across Appalachian Virginia is part of this larger conversation going on across the country with the Mellon Foundation about monuments and memory. And so you can go to the Mellon Foundation website and look at some of the projects that they're funding for inspiration. Also, the Monument Lab in Philadelphia, and they're doing their second round of a project called Regeneration, which is funding these kind of projects across the country. And there's examples of those. And they just did a project in Washington, D.C., which was temporary monuments on the National Mall called Beyond Granite. And those were in place for 30 days. There were 6 monuments there. So all of those can show you some of the ideas of what's possible for inspiration.
Katie, what were you going to say? Sorry, I kept talking.
I was going to say exactly what Lauren said, encouraging folks to look at our website that has a few examples on it, but also, as she mentioned, the monument or the Mellon Foundation's monuments website has really amazing examples of counter narrative, memory, community-based projects as well.
Yeah, I'll put the Mellon Foundation's link in the website for their monument projects.
And this goes back to the question about a second casting of something that's already been done. If the Monuments Project for MAAV would be the first of a potential series, that would be intriguing to our advisory board. I think that it's something that it's the first time it's been done, but then it might be replicable in more than one community. So that's something to keep an eye out for. We have and again, just because we have so many stories that need to be told, and then often they are cross boundary and cross community. The other thing I wanted to say is, Lauren, can you talk a little bit about buildings? Because it seems like a lot of times people need millions of dollars to restore a building, and talk about the relationship between that need and MAAV.
Sure. And then next, if you could talk about the AirShift workshop project that we have in our list of inspiration. So buildings often require a lot more funding than we have available. It also is something that can get funding through other sources. And so I'd be happy to talk with anyone who's interested in working on a building, if that is where the story is, where the project is, to try to figure out how we can do something that might not be traditional historic preservation, to do something that would be more interesting to the Mellon Foundation because it can't be funded through something else, but could be a part of bringing attention and being a catalyst to that building.
I can't speak to AirShift workshop. Can Sarah or Katie?
Hi, I just asked that question because Virginia Tech does have the license to do AirShift workshops in Virginia. And so when we've done some in Patrick County, and so I was just curious to find out what kind of project was part of the inspiration.
Sarah, I think that's one that you listed. Do you want to talk about it? Are you there? We might have to get back to you on that, Julie. I don't know if we are exactly all well versed in that. And yeah, Amber has just put a link to the Monument Lab for their projects. They are out of Philadelphia.
Yeah, Amber, can you say something again? Sorry to put you on the spot, but Amber is our graduate research assistant and specialist in community engagement. And I'd love for you all to just meet her. She's been a wonderful support on the team and might be someone who participates in conversations with you.
Hi all, it's really great to meet you. Sorry I can't have my video right now. But yeah, I'll be responding to emails coming to the MAAV account in addition to Lauren, and happy to meet with you all and answer questions.
I did want to answer a question that came up a couple times in the registration. I don't know if anyone had asked it, but there was some questions about if we have a place where these projects will go, or if we own land where they will go. And the answer is no. We don't have an idea of where they will go. We are hoping that you will be able to figure that out, but also that if you need money for land acquisition, that is part of your budget, or we can help you find additional resources to work through that, or partnerships to develop to be able to install if it is a physical thing that requires land. It's also a great opportunity to do something that's temporary too, if that's more feasible. Okay, well, if there aren't any more questions, feel free to email maav@vt.edu to set up a meeting to talk with us about anything specific. We're so excited to have you all here on this call today, and we're looking forward to talking with you about all of your wonderful ideas and helping to develop those, and really to support you with where you are in your project. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Everyone,
Thanks.
excited to
Appreciate
see your
you.
projects.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Nice to meet you, Bridget.
Bye.
Okay. Are we going to stay on this Zoom? Or do you want
Do
to?
you want to switch to your words?
Okay, I'm